What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Emerson Latzia back looking great, holding it down in the DraftKings studio in Boston. We got a great show for everybody today. It is 5 a.m. and I'm in a Vegas hotel room right now. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review this show. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network, our YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, all those fun places here. Emerson, I'm fighting the fight right now. You tell everyone what's going on at the show right now. I need help.
All right, big guy. I got you covered, man. Wingman for life here. Hollywood Hurley, gentlemen. The latest on Danny Hurley's potential move to the Lakers, why LA is targeting him. Let's handicap the cup, shall we, with Eddie Olczyk breaking down the Stanley Cup final, because one more sleep, people, until the Oilers and Panthers collide. And then we got Amin on the scene. Amin Elhassan live from our Boston studio. And gentlemen, he always smells very good, so I am excited to be sitting right next to him. But GoJo, you've already mentioned it. You're in Vegas. What's on the itinerary here, big man? We're going to be behaving ourselves?
Oh, yeah, definitely, because I am on what'll probably be the earliest career bedtime Vegas trip of any group of guys coming out here. It's a bunch of my former teammates from college, a golf trip that finally made it out of the group chat, as is the parlance of our time, but it's on a trip that probably, I'd say, per man averages 2 to 2.5 kids per household, meaning everyone is very tired, everyone is very motivated to golf, do a little bit of gambling, go to some dinners, and then get the hell to bed. So we're going to try and skirt all of the things that usually cause people trouble in Vegas, because that is just no longer where our life interests are. So I'm fired up about that. We are already well into the green playing blackjack. So I'm going to need that to try and help cover most of the rest of the weekend, which, Dad, I know makes you proud as a father who spends more time. My parents are the biggest gamblers in my life. Every time I go to South Bend to visit them or Arizona, one of the second or third things out of their mouth after hi is, do you want to go to the casino? So I know I'm making Dad proud today.
Arizona's great. There's tons of casinos, but when they built one 10 minutes from our place in South Bend, I mean, we were absolutely ecstatic because we had to drive 45 minutes to the other one before that. So I'm very proud. You're ahead. It's always good to be ahead and playing with, betting with their money right out of the gate. And you're right. Those people that are like, man, if that parent, they get on the road, they're going to lose their mind. They're going to relive the single days. No, you're not. You know what? There may be a percentage of people that do that. But for the most part, man, you are saying, okay, I got downtime. If I don't take advantage of it, it is my own fault. Good friends, good drinks, some good dinner, and early to bed, and get that sleep in and try and store it up.
The oldest I've felt was the other day texting someone about dinner plans out here. And part of my methodology for deciding which place to go to dinner was which place was better lit and not as loud, because I haven't seen some of these guys in a while. This is, the guys I played with at college at Notre Dame, and we would see each other at weddings, and some I see more frequently than others. So you want to catch up. You're trying to kind of get to that. I mean, it's the whole point of doing this, is getting the band back together from a group chat that started during our college graduation week. And so being trapped in some club trying to do that, not really going to help us out all that much.
GoJo.
Go ahead.
I was going to say 111 degrees yesterday in Vegas. That set a record by 1 degree. I don't know how you guys are doing it out there.
Your boy's hurting right now. The gutters are not going to be well on this trip. Yeah. There is going to be a lot of baby powder on the golf course. There is going to be a lot of managing that. It's going to have to be teamwork, making the dream work amongst the guys. So, Dad, you know that feeling all too well, and we are getting ready to battle today.
Hydrate. Got to mix the water in with the beers. So I got two things before I change my pick and pick the Celtics in sweep based on last night. First, Emerson, we love how this show started. Mike's in a hotel room and he said, guys, I'm going to talk a little softer because I'm at a door right next to me to another room. That lasted about 30 seconds. Mike is already back to his normal voice and going to wake up everybody around him. And second, and more importantly for everybody out there, it is National Donut Day. And my wife, the greatest steel producer of all time, went out and got some donuts this morning, because that never happens in the Golic household. We never have donuts. So it is National Donut Day. So, Mike, you go ahead. You and Emerson can start on the Celtics win last night. I am going to feed. Yeah, go ahead.
I have one question. What kind of donut is that? Because it looks like a cinnamon roll. And I was wondering, does a cinnamon roll count as a donut? Because I don't think it does.
Yes, it does. It's not a cinnamon roll. It is a donut.
Okay.
It has cinnamon powder on top of it, and then a cream on top of that as well. I don't know if there's a filling yet. Wait, hold on one second. I'll let you know.
Oh my God!
Oh yeah,
yeah, Daddy.
There's a little filling in it too, so that's good.
Yeah, I totally got that.
He's back to his original form now. Watchers of Mike and Mike from years ago are used to seeing the animal before them right now, just tearing into this donut. So we're going to let Dad enjoy that. And Emerson, you and I are going to take it to the place where we all know it needed to go. You're in Boston right now. I'd imagine the city is buzzing after last night, because the Boston Celtics came out and all wondered what it was going to look like with Kristaps Porzingis coming back for his first action since the first round. And my brothers and sisters in Christ, it looked good. I don't know what people thought might happen here. It could go either way. A calf injury and a guy his size, we've seen, can be pretty perilous in the past. And coming out 20 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 blocks, playing 20 minutes, coming off the bench in that game. Al Horford still getting the start. He looked every bit of the part last night, Dad. This was the kind of performance that I think begs a question. And you mentioned already feeling a little bit nervous about the pick, as am I. I went Mavericks in 7. You went Mavericks in 6. I think this is the core question going forward around this series, Dad. Well, I think there's 2, but this one would be at the top of the list. Is this the best version of Kristaps that we are going to see last night at that game? Because the soreness hasn't set in yet. The war of attrition that is a series in the finals and the postseason, the NBA in general, hasn't set in yet. Or because he is rusty, because he's working his way back into a little bit of basketball shape and hasn't played at this level, is this the worst version of Kristaps that we're going to see this entire series? And I think that question alone is going to decide so much about what we have coming up, potentially the next 6 games.
Not to really convolute the answer, but I think from a calf stance, it's going to be the best he feels. from a cardiovascular stance, it's probably going to be the worst he feels as he starts to get back into game shape. So, yeah, all depends on, and I think if Dallas is going to have a chance in this, though I'm doing that tongue in cheek, is for Porzingis to wake up really limping this morning and hurt, because that's going to be the key, is how does he feel this morning? Because I guarantee you, they started, treating it last night. We'll see how it is this morning, but I think that's the best his calf is going to feel. But I do think cardiovascularly he can get better, because you saw him dragging a little bit, and as Emerson mentioned, we were talking before the show, you could still see maybe a little bit of a limp as well. But my God, I mean, dude had to just feel. Plus, there's that initial energy of I'm back after so many games missed, so much time missed, that he had that burst as well. And I mean, just absolutely changed the complexion of the game at the rim. Absolutely changed it. Then couldn't miss a shot. Got matchups when he was on the offensive side. He couldn't demand the ball fast enough to just shoot over or around people. He was incredible. I mean, to me, and it just, again, shows Boston just can hit you in so many waves. But we're going to, if you're going to talk about two things to me, it's going to be Porzingis and the way he played, and then something we have talked about, Boston's defense. Boston's defense, as a former defensive guy, doesn't matter the sport to me. I always appreciate great defense. And what defense they had. I mean, Luka had one assist on the fourth possession for the Mavericks. Not one assist after that. They were missing open threes. Now, the one thing I'll say on the other side, this is the third time in the playoffs that Dallas has trailed by over 25 points in a game. And here they are still in the finals. And they trailed by 29 in this one. And I did think, Emerson, getting back into the third quarter, they got it down to 8. Right? And I thought, okay, they got it under 10. If I said they could go 10 or less by the fourth quarter, they got a shot at this for how much they were down. They got it down to 8. And then Boston just closed the door and said, no more.
Here's the thing. This has been this team all season long with Porzingis in the lineup. It's just we haven't seen him in a month. So a lot of people maybe outside the market kind of forgot just how damn good, how historically good the Celtics regular season was. This was no surprise to Celtics fans around here at all.
No, it wasn't. But at the same time, I think it was because you weren't sure if Kristaps was going to be able to go out there and do all those things. And to be clear, you're right, Emerson. He didn't look perfect in that game in terms of the way he moved. But, I mean, pulling up and hitting from deep the way that he was, getting to the rim and being able to finish with authority, he did the kind of things that spaced the floor so differently. I mean, Boston's shots could not have been more wide open in this game. It was a steady diet, and I know there's going to be some people that still look at the way it happened for Jason Tatum and say, but there was a steady diet of guys like Jason Tatum getting into the lane, drawing some attention, and then kicking out. And it was one pass, two pass, wide open three for the Boston Celtics. God. Over and over on an endless loop until the Mavs absolutely couldn't breathe anymore. And so, Dad, Emerson's right about one thing. That's been the Boston Celtics. And so if they're going to play like that, it's going to be really difficult for the Dallas Mavericks to get anything done. But on the other side, the way they were defended, which we knew going into this series, Drew Holiday, Derek White, obviously there, but Jaylen Brown, the kind of defense that he played last night on ball was incredible. They get that kind of effort and keep Luka to just being a scorer instead of being a scorer and a distributor and everything else that he normally is. That seemed like the concession they were willing to make game one, and it worked. The biggest thing is going to be, is Kyrie going to shoot this badly the entire series? 0 for 5 from beyond the arc, and had some good looks at it. And that's the one thing that gives me hope, is they did cut it to single digits late, and they did it on a night where their other star player gave them basically nothing offensively. And
we've seen that before out of Kyrie, and we've seen him play great. But it's still amazing to me that your backcourt gave you 3 assists, it was 3 assists, 2 for Kyrie and 1 for Luka. I mean, that is amazing to me. So we've seen this side of Kyrie, and for Dallas to win this, they're gonna need to see the other side of it as well. I'm wondering too, from Emerson, again, of Celtic fan, because a lot of people are still going to rip on Tatum. Tatum, listen, he still had 16 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists. He's that complete guy, but everybody keeps talking about the Mamba mentality. Everybody wants to see that killer instinct. And Jaylen Brown, the way he's playing offensively and defensively, I had said if Jaylen Brown has a better series and they win, this is going to be considered Jaylen Brown's team, or there's a good chance of that. But sometimes I think Jason Tatum gets the short end of the stick on what people expect out of him and what he's giving, which if you look at it, he's still giving pretty damn much.
Yeah, I think a big criticism of him entering this series was people wanted to see him go toe-to-toe with the opposing team's biggest star, which was Luka. So, yeah, Tatum, was he great last night? No, the turnovers kind of bugged me the most here, but I don't think many people are focusing on it a whole lot. He's going to be better than he was last night. The team was great because you look at the other star, Luka, fantastic shooting night. You know what happened? His team got their faces kicked in.
They did. And let's get to some sound, Emerson, from the other star and his team, Kyrie Irving, that we talked about here, and hear what the Mavs are thinking heading from game 1 to game 2 in a series sport. Well, remember, we've seen plenty of NBA finals. How many years did we watch Golden State and Cleveland where it was just seesawing blowouts? So this is by no means over. Kyrie knows that as well or better than anybody out there.
I don't necessarily agree that it's a trap, that they want to set us. I think that they really rely on their great defensive ball pressure, their one-on-one defenders, and they funnel us into certain areas. I mean, even as I say that they're relying on the one-on-one, every time I got an ISO, there's, almost 2-3 people waiting for me to get in there. So I got to catch the ball on a live dribble and just be aware of my opportunities. It's uncharacteristic for us to have only 9 assists. The ball's got to move a little bit more. And again, that starts with me just being able to push the pace, get us some easy opportunities, and just adjust to what they're throwing at us. So it's a fun series. It was fun just, going into the game. It's still going to be fun, but there's going to be a level of chess that still has to be played.
All right, gentlemen, which brings us to Cash It or Trash It, presented by DraftKings. Stay tuned because you will hear more about DraftKings and all it has to offer throughout the show. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. So for today's edition of Cash It or Trash It here, guys, we look ahead to game 2 of the series. That sees the Celtics favored by 7 in game 2. Again, they were favored by 6.5 entering game 1. Are you guys cashing or trashing the Celtics jumping out to a 2-0 series lead?
I feel like I have to trash it in the name of my pick right now to try and have this series go the way it needs to. One needs to get stolen here. And I do think, heard it from Kyrie there, obviously. Smart basketball player can say the right things at the podium, but I also think in general, not going to be rattled by this moment. And I think that goes a long way between him and Luka, the confidence that pervades to the rest of that roster, because he's right. They did only have 9 assists the entire game. I saw this stat from ESPN Stats and Info. Dallas in the first 3 rounds of the playoffs had shot 57% from the field on passes from Luka Doncic. Last night, the Mavs went 1 of 6 on the floor from feeds from Luka Doncic, and their 3rd game 1 loss of the postseason. So it was uncharacteristic for them. And Dad, I think Luka, Kyrie, too good of players, even against a team as defensively gifted as Boston, who had a clear plan of attack, right? Let them play ISO ball, try and make sure they spaced it with all those defenders to cut off any of the opportunities for the assists that have made this Mavs team so good and prosper. But I think that's going to be really hard to execute 2 games in a row against a team this good.
I'm for the sake of my pick, which I can't bail on one game I was joking about before, I have to trash that and think Dallas is going to steal one. They want to move the ball more. I mean, there's one thing to wanting to, another team to being able to. So we'll see, because Boston has been playing such great defense. But I certainly believe in Luka and Kyrie that they can help bring this team back. Like I said, what made me feel better is seeing this team drop it to an 8-point lead in the 3rd quarter when I thought they were going to make a run. And kudos to Boston for shutting that down. We talked about Luka, 30 points on 12 of 26 shooting, 4 of 12 from three-point land. The rest of the team was 16 of 42 from the field, 1 of 10 from three-point land. So no help anywhere on that. And I do think they're too good of a team to let that happen 2 games in a row. Also on the side, Boston Celtic fans should be happy. This is now the 7th win in the postseason by 15 or more points. They broke a franchise record. There were 4 other times. They did it 6 times. Or 3 other times, I believe, and all those times they ended up winning the title. So that's a good positive message for Boston there, going in the right direction. But not only wondering what Porzingis was going to be, Mike, in game 1, but now I'm interested in game 2 of how he comes back, even though it's another month before game 2. I mean, my God, can they space these out anymore? Yeah. They're in Boston. Play tomorrow. What are you waiting for Sunday for? I mean, my God, nobody, no fan is happy about that except for the team in Porzingis because he gets another day to sit around.
They've got to be thrilled about that. There's no doubt. I'm with you, though. The frustration when we've been spoiled for so much of the postseason in the spring and we get to this point in June is just ridiculous. So I'm with you on that. Dad, I think part of – I can't take you seriously right now
either.
Pounding this donut. Emerson's laughing. I don't even remember the point that I was going to try and make in all of this. Maybe it was something about role players being there. Maybe it's something about Boston being unsure. Hey, is Kristaps going to keep coming off the bench like this? That's an interesting factor in this series and the way that it's going to shake out. So that stuff's cool too. Dad, how was the donut overall? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I wish knowing what your point is. Come on, be a professional, for God's sake.
Well, I mean, Emerson's giggling his ass off over there. I can't take any of this seriously.
It's actually a new donut place here. I think it's called Divine Dough, and it's brand new here. And like I said, we've only been back here a week, so that's where Mike, your mother, went this morning. So very good. I enjoyed it. Nothing has beaten the Martin's cream-filled eclair at this point.
Hey, honey, you want some Divine Dough this morning? Sure, that sounds great.
Oh, see, you're turning it into that. That's what you're turning it into, huh, Emerson?
I'm talking about the damn donut place, buddy.
No, you're not. No, you're not. Just admit what you're doing.
I'm not. I refuse to admit what I'm doing.
Okay, I don't mind what you're doing at all.
There he is.
I didn't realize that me being out in Vegas would be the least controversial member of the show this morning in the way they chose to go about their business. So congratulations to the Boston Celtics coming out and setting a tone. We will see if the Boston Celtics learned. Last series, they managed to get over the hump on the Game 2 boogeyman that had upended them through most of this postseason, where they take their eye off the prize and they allowed the other team to get a little bit of momentum back. In those cases, those were undermanned teams, most of them already without their star player. Not going to be a problem for the Dallas Mavericks. Coming up next, though, star player returning to the field for the Indianapolis Colts this season. We check in on the status of the injured shoulder recovery for Anthony Richardson next on GoJo Golic.
All right, everyone remembers last NFL season, Colts young rookie quarterback Anthony Richardson played in just 4 games before suffering an AC joint sprain that ended up requiring surgery. So Richardson, he was held out of practice yesterday, final offseason practice there with right shoulder soreness. However, the second-year player insisting now that that decision was purely precautionary. Listen to this.
I've been dealing with soreness since I started throwing. It's just my shoulder, but it's hard to listen to the trainers sometimes. They're like, nah, you got to sit out for a day. I don't want to sit out, but it's part of the health journey, so I'm just rocking with them.
All right, no one's hitting the panic button here, right, GoJo?
No, not at this point, Dad, and I defer to you to this as the veteran of the veteran of the NFL on this show, but also the veteran of shoulder injuries and recovery time on the NFL. So, Dr. Golic, put your hat on here and assess for the shoulder injury for a young man who's got to use that shoulder a fair amount. Well, at this point in the offseason, does this raise any alarms for you?
No, it doesn't. He's got plenty of time, and they're going to be smart about it, bringing him back on the pitch count or whatever they have to do. Plus, all my shoulder surgery, I had 10 surgeries on 7 on the right and 3 on the left. The difference is, though, is the way I use my shoulders as a D lineman and the way, Anthony Richardson uses his shoulder, his throwing shoulder as a quarterback. It's much different, obviously, on how he uses it. So you have to be a lot more careful. Whereas a lineman, you just get the hell in there, put a brace on if you have to, and go play. So I'm not worried now. It is June. You got a long time. Like I said, that it's not like they're going to rush him back and say, come on, get out there and throw. We need you to throw. So I don't have any concern. There are rarely concerns that I have outside of, if you're just having an injury right now that you're starting to rehab for OTAs on how they're going to take care of your body. So I look forward to seeing what he can do, what this offense is going to bring. They went defensive heavy in free agency, bringing in Roquan Davis, I believe, from the Dolphins on the D line, and also Latu, getting the edge rusher out of BYU. It was BYU, right? It was BYU.
No, Latu was UCLA.
UCLA. I'm sorry. It was yeah, that's right. So they went defensive more there, but obviously this is built around Anthony Richardson and what he's going to do. So no, I don't have any worries right now.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I was on a podcast with my buddy JP Acosta the other day over at SB Nation, and he said, looking at the AFC South, he thinks that this could be a division with 3 teams potentially in playoff contention. And I don't know about all that, Dad. I mean, obviously, our buddy Emerson Latzia nodding his head right now for the Jacksonville Jaguars, who it seems like before the season we could get the Trevor Lawrence contract worked out, which is going to be fascinating for a number of reasons. We've been so focused on Tua. What happens there is going to go a long way. But this division, I think in most people's minds, pretty squarely belongs to the Houston Texans right now. We're not exactly sure what's going to go on in Tennessee this year. They've brought in a bunch of parts. They've absolutely tried to go out here and surround Will Levis with a bunch of stuff to work with, but we're not sure how any of it works in all practicality with Will Levis in a longer sample size this season. New offensive line, obviously new head coach in there, and Brian Callahan. And then you get to a team like the Colts, Dad, that I think last year, if you're looking for what the diagnosis was coming off the season, it was, hey, we think you got a coach. Anthony Richardson goes down early on in this season. Gardner Minshew steps in, and Shane Steichen is able to take that system and turn it into something that looks like it mitigated a lot of that loss. The O-line looked better than it did in the 2022 season. So overall, coming into this year, Dad, if Anthony Richardson is able to stay healthy, what do you think the ceiling for this team is?
Well, listen, I think it's time to maybe take a breath. We saw what Houston did, and we were surprised at what Houston did, right? Right out of the gate with the new everything that we've talked about. But they only had one more win. Now that we're settling in and the expectation now is Houston's division, let's remember they had 10 wins. Jacksonville and Indy had 9. Jacksonville and Houston both had the same division record at 4-2, and Indianapolis was 3-3. They actually had the same, Indianapolis and Houston, the same conference record of 7-5. So it's not like Houston was way ahead of everybody else. They just surprised the hell out of us that they went from everybody in their first year of everything to winning the division. So I do think this division is closer than some people think. I really do. I think it's a 3-team race. I'm going to put Tennessee aside for a bit. But a lot of it is going to be on how this defense improves. This defense was in the bottom 10 for the Colts, and then now Anthony Richardson incorporating into the offense. Boy, you couldn't be more different, right, as far as your quarterback or who you have a quarterback and who would have to come in as a backup. They picked up Joe Flacco, so that seems pretty odd as far as the offensive scheme.
I saw Anthony Richardson talking on McAfee the other day saying Joe Flacco still has an absolute cannon. Like he said, when they start throwing deep balls in practice and Pretty Boy Flacco cuts it loose, Anthony Richardson knows he's got to warm it up and make sure he doesn't get shamed by the old man.
Well, he has to have a gun because that's all he's got. It's not like he can run anywhere or escape anybody. So I am to Emerson's having a smile on his face. I think it's a 3-team race for the top. I'm giving Houston their due, but it's not like they were 5 games clear of everybody else last year.
No, that's a fair point. And I think for me, the interesting part that's going to go with that is how they deploy Anthony Richardson this year. Shane Steichen's offense and what we saw with them in Philadelphia with Jalen Hurts, who we'll talk about in a second, obviously makes heavy use of the quarterback run. And we saw last year what that looks like when it flies too close to the sun and doesn't do enough around them in Philadelphia. But for Anthony Richardson, we saw a bunch of that same stuff working in there. And when you've got everything in that backfield that they've got there, Jonathan Taylor back last year on the new money deal, behind that offensive line, receiving core now, Michael Pittman Jr., A.D. Mitchell that they drafted, Josh Downs from last year. It's a pretty strong young receiving core if they can start to get some of that similar cadence that they built in for Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia, which, speaking of Everson, lots of new out in Philadelphia for Jalen Hurts. What do we got there?
Yeah, you've already mentioned there's a new offensive coordinator in town, and Kellen Moore. This was a team that started off 10-1 last season, gentlemen, but dropped 5 of its last 6 games. They got routed by Tampa in the wild card round. So Jalen Hurts speaking yesterday here about the transition to a new offense.
You know, right now it's been a lot of new inventory in. Majority of it, you know, probably 95% of it being new, and so it's just been that process, and it's been a fun process because you get to see what works for other people. And the number of coaches that I've had since I've been here, I've been able to take in a lot of new knowledge and new understanding. And so I think the goal coming in was to, you know, learn Kellen's offense and master it. And I think that's been a process. And I think by the end of it, I want it to be mine and have it in my own way.
That's a lot of new.
It's a lot of new, and especially, Dad, the one thing he didn't, we are going to continue to highlight this season for him is no Jason Kelce up front. Cam Jurgens finally gets the chance to take over there. I saw Lane Johnson talking the other day saying Cam's not going to come in and try and be Jason, who, Dad, was basically a quarterback on the field for them. He was a guy that Jalen Hurts could rely on for a lot of the things that are now going to fall on his shoulders.
Remember, this is the 3rd offensive coordinator in 3 years for a team that was just in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. So that's major change. And if you listen to Jalen Hurts talk and anybody talk, the language can be different. Some of the plays could look similar, but responsibilities are different. Nuances are different. So learning a brand new scheme, the biggest thing you're trying to gauge now is timing. And you're doing timing not in pads. So you can get the timing down in how you're practicing now, but then when it ups the level of speed and intensity, you have to get that timing as well. Nick Sirianni felt that the offense had gotten stale. He's taken that step back, saying, Kellen Moore, do your thing. So I think, and they need to take advantage with some of the pieces they have, from the wide receivers to Saquon Barkley. I mean, they are loaded on offense, still have some great pieces on that offensive line. So, you know, the expectations are high, so it is incumbent on Kellen Moore, coach, Jalen Hurts, quarterback, and the rest of the offense to really digest this new scheme and spit it out as quickly as possible to get the timing down.
I still think, too, one of the most important factors for the offensive improvement could be the defensive improvement. Because remember, by the end of last year, linebacker level, safety level, especially at nickel, they were decimated by injury and just a non-compete. And that kind of lack of complementary football can throw off even the best operations or most talented in this case. Coming up next, let's take a look ahead at some pucks and ponies this weekend. Big stuff going down. Eddie Olczyk going to help us break it all up next here on GoJo Golic.
Panthers, shout out. You're going to be watching the Stanley Cup.
Absolutely. I mean, do I have a pulse? I do. I'll be there.
Nice walk-off Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniels is ready for the Stanley Cup final, and that leads us to the iciest shot of the night, presented by Jägermeister. Best served at 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Damn, that's cold. Check Jägermeister out at www.draftkingsxjagermeister.com. Today's shot is who has a shot at hoisting Lord Stanley, the Florida Panthers, minus 135 favorites to win the whole damn thing. But you have an entire nation, the nation of Canada, oh Canada, pulling for Connor McDavid, the face of the NHL and the Oilers, to help us figure out who can prevail here in the Stanley Cup final. Senior catching up with an old friend and someone who knows his way around the hockey rink.
All right, joining us now, my buddy from back in the day, and I guess still today, Eddie Olczyk, TNT hockey analyst, NBC horse racing analyst as well. Eddie, appreciate a few minutes this morning, and since we're going two sports, let's start with hockey. The puck drops on Saturday for the Stanley Cup Finals in Florida. Edmonton, a Canadian team looking to win the Cup since '93 in Montreal. Against the Panthers in Florida. So overall, first, when you saw this matchup was going to be, what were your initial thoughts?
Yeah, well, Mike, always great to be with you, and thanks for having me. I just got done doing for TNT. We did the Western Conference Final, so we did the Edmonton-Dallas series. Full disclosure, back in January, I was asked to give my Stanley Cup prediction, and I thought Dallas-Florida was the one to go, and obviously, I came very close with Dallas losing in 6 games to the Edmonton Oilers. But, you know, I think the interesting thing is that you have 2 teams that are highly skilled. You have 2 teams that really play or have the ability to play a different style, meaning Edmonton is the fast team, the skilled team, the team that's okay with maybe defending a little bit more, even though they have the star players. And you could argue with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, you could argue 2 of the top 8 players in the league, 7 players in the league. But they've had some games this year, like they did in the Western Conference Final in Game 6, where they only got 10 shots on goal, an NHL record in one of those type of situations to go to the Stanley Cup Final. They had a game earlier in the playoffs against LA, Mike, where they only had 13 shots in a game, and they won that game as well. But on the other side, Florida is a team that likes to be in your face. They don't mind taking penalties. They have a bully mentality, and they're going to go after Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and Evan Bouchard. They're really skilled players. But the one thing with the Edmonton team is that, and they won a couple of games in this last round against Dallas, their power play has kind of caught fire here. I mean, there were stretches during the regular season where Edmonton's power play was clipping Mike at about 38 to 40% for about a month stretch, which is absolutely unheard of, really. So right now they've got it going. Now they've had 6 or 7 days off. Maybe that slows it down a little bit. But I think Florida's going to be in their face and be really physical. And I think it's got to be I think it's got a chance to be a one hell of a series. Florida was in the Cup final last year. They lost to Vegas. They were banged up. They had 8 or 9 days off in between a conference final and a final. No excuses. And this should be, even with the long travel. Now, take that into consideration. There will be, if it goes 7 games, if it goes the full Monty, Mike, there will be 4 2-day breaks in this series. So if you're the coach or either coach and you look at it and go, depending if there's any overtimes, you could probably exhaust your bench maybe a little bit more than if it was every other night, so to speak. So maybe your big players end up playing somewhere in that 25, 26-minute range instead of the normal probably, 19 to 21 or 22. So something to keep an eye on. Lots of rest for these teams and with the long travel.
Before we get to the Belmont, are you leaning toward the favorite in Florida in this one?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. When the numbers came out, odds-wise for the series, Mike, I was a little bit surprised that Florida was as low as a favorite that they were. I mean, layman's terms, it was kind of like a pick 'em type of series. I thought that Florida would be a little bit more of a stronger favorite. The late money here recently has said that a lot more people are jumping on the Florida bandwagon. I just think that they're a deep team. Sergei Bobrovsky's playing extremely well in goal. I think they can win any game you want. You want to play it rough, like I said earlier, they can do that. You want to play a high-scoring game, they can do that. If you want to play a 2-1, 3-2 game, which we saw a lot of in the Rangers series in the conference finals in East, they can play that way too. The door is open. They've gained a lot from last year. They got a really good team, and but look, they do have to stay out of the penalty box. Like, they're going to take penalties. We know that. But I don't think you could be taking 5 and 6 a game. I don't think you want to play that game with Edmonton, because they won the last series, the last 2 games in that series against Dallas. They had 4 power play goals in 2 games. They won both games, Mike, and Dallas is home, and Edmonton's playing in a cup final. So I'm expecting a relatively long series, but I would give the nod to Florida.
All right, let's move on a few minutes on the Belmont this weekend. Yeah. So you have the Kentucky Derby winner, Mystic Dan, in the field. Preakness winner, Sees the Gray, in the field. Yet Sierra Leone is the favorite. Why?
Yeah. Well, I think because of the trip that he had in the Kentucky Derby. And when you and Junior had me on right before the Derby, our horse, Catching Freedom, ran a really good race. He ended up finishing 4th that day, just got beat about a length and a half with that blanket finish. But Sierra Leone finished 2nd in the Kentucky Derby to Mystic Dan. He did not run into Preakness, so he's got some extra time off. He'll have had 5 weeks in between races, which I think is certainly an advantage for a young 3-year-old horse. There's a lot of pace in this race, Mike. It sets up for a horse that can maybe sit right off the pace or come from way behind, which Sierra Leone will be. He's breaking out of post position number 9. Let people know, usually the Belmont is a 1.5-mile race, but since this race is not at Belmont in Elmont, New York, it's being run in Saratoga Springs up at Saratoga Racecourse. It's only going to be 1.25 miles this year, so something to keep an eye on when you're looking at handicapping this particular race. So that's why he's the favorite. He had a trouble trip in the Derby. Seems to set up for him. He's going to be, every bit of 9 to 5, maybe 8 to 5. I'm going to use him. I'm not going to pick him, but I certainly think you have to use him.
All right, Eddie, then you know where I'm going. I wait for you to give me the pick every single time we talk racing, man. Yeah. Where are you leaning here so I know where I'm going? Yeah.
There is a hockey and horse racing tie, so remind me at the end, and just to give the quick little anecdote on this horse that I'm taking. But I'm going to go to the horse on the outside of Sierra Leone, Mike. I'm going to go with number 10, Mindframe, for trainer Todd Pletcher, who has 2 other horses in this particular race. This horse is the, kind of the least seasoned horse in this field of 10. Only run 2 career races. Did run on Derby Day at Churchill Downs and a allowance race going 1 1/16. Going to stretch out a little bit here. I think it gets the perfect setup. Going to be every bit of 7-2 or 4-1 in this particular race. So the faster that they go in the Belmont, the better it would be for the 2 outside horses, that being the 9. Sierra Leone and the 10, Mindframe. So all my money is going to be on number 10, Mindframe. The hockey and horse racing Pucks and Ponies tie is that one of the co-owners of Mindframe is St. Elias Stables. And St. Elias Stables is owned by Teresa and Vinny Viola, who own the Florida Panthers. Oh. So think about this, Mike. On Saturday, the Belmont will be running at Saratoga for the first time in the history of the running of the Belmont. Vinny and Teresa Viola will have a horse go off at about 6:40 Eastern in the Belmont, trying to win the Belmont, one of the 3 jewels of the Triple Crown. And in about 1 hour and 25 minutes later, their team will be playing in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup final. So I'm not sure if our friends at DraftKings have a prop of Mindframe and the Florida Panthers in Game 1, but maybe got to give Johnny Avello a call and go, maybe we got to put this thing up and see what we can figure out. So we'll see if the Panthers and Mindframe can give people the ultimate daily double. And most importantly, the 2 unbelievable people in the Viola family, they can get the daily double on Saturday night.
Well, that private jet will be going from Saratoga to Florida pretty quickly after that. That's for sure. Well, that's a great connection with hockey and horse racing. And Eddie, I always love talking to you about hockey and about horse racing. So I really do appreciate the time, man. Thanks.
Okay, Mike, anytime. Great being with you. Say hi to Junior. Appreciate it.
Rejoice, ladies and gentlemen. The schedule for the first ever 12-team college football playoff is official. So the CFP releasing the dates and times for all 11 games of the expanded playoff format this week. The first game here, GoJo, being Friday, December 20th, a month before the national championship game, which will go down on Monday, January 20th. And this is a rock-solid set of football that will be played. I cannot wait for this. What do you think?
So there's a lot of interesting about this, guys. First off, I feel like, and I know we talked about this at the NFL schedule release with Dad, a lot of the reaction that people have is, I think, hey, it reminds you that we're close to football. Like, we're under 100 days of the NFL, which means we're under 100 days and even closer to college football. All this makes it feel more real. But I think in this case in particular, Dad, it presents an interesting predicament now because we finally have in meaningful games the NFL and college football butting up against each other on a couple occasions here. Emerson mentioned those first 4 games of the CFP. That's going to rub up against the afternoon games for the NFL, and there's a couple of bangers that Saturday there. Houston and Kansas City at 1 p.m. and then Baltimore-Pittsburgh at 4:30. So you've got a division game. You've got that Houston team we talked about against the champs. It's a lot of great football, but we're going to start to find out more and more. And the belief of everyone over at Fox, some of the partners that share rights for both of these, is that everybody should be able to eat. So do you agree with that? Do you think everyone can coexist this way peacefully?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's for a couple of games, right? They're the big games for college in the playoffs, and obviously we're not at the end of the season yet in the NFL, but we're getting close to that, so certainly meaningful games. Listen, that's what the button on the remote is, last channel, right? You can flip back and forth. It's just you knew when you went to this and you were going to get some extra games that you were going to have somewhere you were going to clash head to head. So, it's very difficult to avoid. Is it the greatest thing in the world? No, but you're always going to want to spin it positively, right? Not sit there and say, oh my God, no one's going to watch our college game because the NFL on, even though we know NFL is king. But college football is pretty damn, not close to the NFL, but as far as close to the top, they're nearer the top than a lot of other sports. So I just think it's more football for everybody to watch. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it.
The diehards on each side are going to be in their respective camps on this. There's going to be plenty of college football people that don't care about the NFL that are going to be fine there. I will be interested. But again, TV ratings don't need to govern what we enjoy. It's going to be awesome to have this much football. The other interesting part of this from a scheduling standpoint is the 4 first-round games for the college football playoff in the expanded form, as we've talked about, going to be played on college campuses. So teams are going to earn the right to host, kind of like we see in March Madness for the women's tournament, where you see the early round sites that they've talked about doing away with, where they get to host on those campuses, which I think is awesome, Dad. This is like the one part where in an entire version of the sport now that seems totally catered to TV audiences and to the people that control the money in this sport, this was the one thing that most of us as fans went, hey, can we at least get this? And the answer was yes.
Well, yeah, and just again, so everybody's wondering how this thing works. With 12 teams, the top 4 power conferences are going to get buys. And how well did that work out now that we lost a power conference or a power conference in the Pac-12? So now we have 4. So it would be those 4 would get a bye. And then it would be 5 playing 12, 6, 11, 7, 10, 8, 9. If you're 5, 6, 7, or 8, you're playing on your home campus. So going to our school as an example, Notre Dame will never be 1 through 4 because as an independent, Notre Dame cannot win a conference, so they won't be 1 through 4. But they can be 5, 6, 7, or 8, which means the first game would be at Notre Dame, December 20th or 21st. So now you start talking about where some of these schools are and what time of the year it is and what kind of weather you're going to have, a la Kansas City playing, Miami going to Kansas City last year and how cold it was. So you're going to get more of that depending on where these games are. And I use Notre Dame as an example because on that day, there could be 8 feet of snow here, or it could be sunny and really nice. You have no idea what it's going to be, but that's how it can be when you go to these college campuses to play in December.
I can say as someone who grew up in the cold, grew up in Connecticut, went to college in South Bend, Indiana, I don't even want to play in South Bend, Indiana in December. I understand that it's going to sound soft when everyone loves snow football. Like, man, listen, You ask every Notre Dame football player to a man. I think we all enjoyed those end-of-year trips to Southern California or to Palo Alto. We make fun of them for not wanting to come play out there, but let me tell you what, at the end of November, when it's really starting to get crispy out there and all of a sudden you get to get on that plane and land at Stanford or land at USC and play that football game, everyone feels that little extra pep in their step, and that's before you get to the In-N-Out Burger post game.
So here's something to understand as well. We talk about a home field in the playoffs for the NFL, where they're playing in their home in November and in December and January. For college, again, let's just use Notre Dame as an example. The season is over, and normally their last game, like you talked about, is on the road. So you're talking middle of November is their last home game. So it's not like if there's a ton of horrible weather in December, Notre Dame is used to it either, right? I mean, they don't play in tons of snow unless you get that freak snowstorm sometimes in October or November. But for the most part, you're not playing in a lot of that. So it would even be a bit of a shocking moment for the Notre Dame team as well.
It would be there. And I'd be curious, too, would the dates line up? Like, would students be around? Like, December 21st, you're around Christmas break time. Are people even on campus at that point? And how's that going to factor in at a lot of these places that are on varying schedules? So it's going to be a learning experience for everyone to get to that point this year. But what we've seen, Dad, in the midst of all the change and upheaval is it still works. And now the thing that I think most people going into this year, because we've seen now ESPN's Football Power Index, they put out their hardest college football schedules of the year. They also use that to then prognosticate who had the best chances of making it to the college football playoff this year. And what we saw last year was parity in the sport that has been uncommon really in my adult lifetime in college football, where we were used to having one incredibly dominant team that sort of went out there and powered through everyone else. And you could argue to an extent Michigan was that last year, but because Alabama took a little bit of a step down relative to their overwhelming standard last year, things felt more open. Georgia not making it into the dance last year made it feel more opening. Having some of the Pac-12 teams even in their dying year and their Texas truly being back, all these things made college football seem more accessible to a lot of people. And while I always caution people, college football playoff expansion was never about a more competitive field for this. That wasn't going to make Alabama or Georgia less dominant up against the rest of the competition just because you let few more people into the party, but it involves more people in the conversation. We have seen, however, though, that just some of the changes in the sport, changing in roster construction due to NIL, did allow some programs, especially with older, more veteran rosters, to compete at a higher level, to involve more people in the conversation in the way that this playoff, I think, is designed to do. So I wonder if that'll carry over year in a year where we don't have as many star quarterbacks and the rosters might not be as old and veteran as they were last year.
Exactly, yeah, with the changes that go in. So listen, you're right. There's going to be growing pains. That's a great point about schools that may be on break and where there's students can be at games. That I didn't even think of that until you said it. So we'll see as we go through the first year of that. But it's fun to look at, like ESPN has their, football power index out of their top teams. And if it went by this first round matchups in this, the 5-12 would be Alabama and Michigan. It would be Michigan at Alabama, according to the FPI, if you go to the top 12 teams. Then it would also be Penn State would host Florida State, Notre Dame would host Missouri, and Oklahoma would host Tennessee. It would be Georgia, Oregon, Texas, and Ohio State that had the bye. So it's still the Blue Bloods, and that's going to change. It'll be different, and you'll see if any of the group of 5 teams will get into it. So there's certainly more of an opportunity for them, it being to 12 teams now, for them to get into this. But that's just based off the FPI right now. It's just fun to look at the matchups because you're going to get more of them, and you're going to get them at stadiums where you don't know what the weather's going to be. So that is something I'm looking forward to, it because I don't have to play in it.
Yes, exactly. I think we both can enjoy that from the comfort of either a press box or at home, a little bit of hot cocoa indoors, watching the snow outside and some other young person going and having to deal with that in actuality. Coming up next, hour number 2, Amin Elhassan is going to join us to look back at Game 1 of the NBA Finals and find out if the Dallas Mavericks are already dead where they stand. Next on GoJo Golic.
Gentlemen, I'm no longer stuck in the studio alone with Howie here behind the camera because we have living legend, man who has a tremendous scent and musk, Amin Elhassan, in studio, co-host of Oddball here on DraftKings Network with Charlotte Wilder. What's up? Say it. Say it, coward.
I can't get over how Amin has to sit in that chair right next to Emerson, who's got this whole desk in front of him. Amin, how do you feel about the chair?
I feel like I did something wrong and I got put in the corner.
Yes.
You know what I can do? If you want, guys, I'll just come over here and we could do the segment like this.
You know what? Go back to the desk. Back to the desk.
All right. Well, Amin Elhassan firmly not in trouble in the studio, even if the setup would suggest that there. He is the co-host of Oddball with Amin Elhassan, Charlotte Wilder, who joined us yesterday on the show and was in town for the Game 1 blowout at TD Garden. So, Amin, was that what you were expecting going into this series in Game 1? How did you have this thing handicapped in your mind with Kristaps coming back and all that uncertainty going into the first night?
Yeah, I don't think anyone expected Kristaps Porzingis to have the night he did. He looked so comfortable out there and he shot the ball incredibly well. But believe it or not, GoJo, on Oddball, I said I think the Celtics win and they win big in Game 1 because of a bunch of factors. Number one, they're at home. Let's just start there. Great home crowd, the best record in the league. So that was you're already dealing with a tough opponent. Number two, the Mavericks haven't played well in Game 1s throughout the playoffs. I know they won Game 1 against Minnesota, but they lost Game 1 against the Clippers. They lost Game 1 in the second round as well against the Oklahoma City Thunder. So they already have like a track record of getting off to slow starts. I mean, they've had other Game 1 losses in prior playoffs. Number three, if you look at the Celtics, beyond Tatum and Brown, Horford, even guys like Pritchard, Hauser, Derek White, they played in the finals before. I know it feels like a million years ago, and some of these guys feel young, but they have that experience before. Whereas the Dallas Mavericks, you got Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic is a different animal, different beast. But then all those other guys, the P.J. Washingtons, the Derrick Jones Jr.'s, like their experience quite isn't there. I know DJ played for the Heat and played in some deep playoff runs, but in terms of making shots and doing what they were expected to do last night, those guys were all kind of shell-shocked, and that's what happened. They came out, the Celtics came out aggressive, the Mavericks looked like they didn't know where they were, and then you get this big lead in the first half.
So, again, I think we know that Boston can play well at all five positions, all five starters in double figures. We know that. We know the strengths and weaknesses of Dallas. What we didn't know is what Porzingis was going to do after missing so much time. 21 minutes, 20 points, 6 rebounds, 3 blocks, changed the game at the rim and was just begging for the ball on certain matchups on the offensive side. Mike asked this question earlier. I think it's a good question. Did we see the best of him because he was coming back fresh off an injury? And is it only going to go down from here as far as maybe the injury, or how about cardiovascularly? What did we see in the first game from him, and then what can we expect going forward?
Well, Mike, let me start because we're on the DraftKings network. On Oddball, we had to take over-unders, and I had Kristaps Porzingis under on 6.5 rebounds, so, doing it easy for myself right
there
here.
We go.
Go. Thanks, Dad. But specifically, you talk about, is there going to be a slowdown? He had 20 points. 18 of them were in the first half. So he had a great start to the game, and they did a great job of getting him in the flow. A lot of pick and pops, a lot of simple actions. As things progressed and like that hot start ended, he didn't look as great as he did originally. Now, is that cardio? Is that soreness? I don't know. I think if you're the Celtics, you're just happy that he got up and down and didn't feel hurt and didn't limp or anything like that. But the reality is, the Mavericks are going to come back in Game 2 and the rest of the series and say, okay, you got a good leg now? Let's see it. Let's make you have to defend these guys. And that was the thing I was most surprised of. The Mavericks didn't really hunt that matchup as much and as overtly as I thought they would. And I thought that allowed Porzingis to kind of get a rhythm, get out there, feel comfortable, and then once he got rolling, it was pretty hard to stop.
That was something we had talked about on here, too, because that's kind of universal across sport. You got a guy with an own injury here. Let's go early and often and see how well that's actually going to hold up in real-life game stress situations. So, to your point, waned a little bit in the second half. We'll talk about game 2 in a second. But the other thing I want to talk about from game 1, I mean, so many people have been focused on the dynamic of the Celtics backcourt between Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown here. As you assess how that team is structured with those two stars through game 1, Jaylen Brown seemed to really pop, whether it was defensively, his aggression overall here. I know that whose team is this thing is kind of overplayed, but how has Jaylen Brown changed his role in this team? Because he seems even more assertive than maybe he has in the past, where he's already been a guy that's taken over in the fourth quarter for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's encouraged by the team. Hey, man, be aggressive, go out there, make plays. And he did that for certain last night, particularly on the defensive end. He had a couple of big steals that led to dunks in the open floor. He had some big shots from beyond the arc and a huge block on Kyrie Irving at the rim that really got the crowd energized and fired up. To be honest, GoJo, the whole, whose team is it thing, that's for us. That's for fans. Those guys, they don't go out there and say, well, hold on, let me check with Jason Tatum. Is it all right if I get aggressive here? All right, cool. I got the okay from the guy whose team it. No, they go out there and they play basketball. And there's a rhythm that you can feel, hey, the team needs some energy. Hey, this thing has been cut to 8. I need to do something to kind of get us going again, get us revved up. And he did that. I had to give him an A+ on that game last night. Tatum did not have an impressive game. And I'm going to tell you something, guys. This is now my either third or fourth playoff game at Boston this postseason. The crowd, when Tatum is not playing well, does not feel like, hey, he's got it going, don't worry, keep shooting. It's not like any other star player in any other arena. It's kind of like, here we go again with this guy. And so when Tatum hit that 3, after they made that little run after the Mavericks had cut it to 8, there's a sigh of relief, like, oh, thank God he made a shot. And it's pretty amazing to watch in person when you see, oh, shit, they don't believe in him. This building doesn't believe in him like that. And Brown kind of brings the bravado that even when he's having an off night, you feel the crowd is still believing that he can get it turned around.
I mean, why do you think that is with Jason Tatum at this point? You said relative to other star players, a guy who we've known and seen on these big stages for a long time.
Familiarity breeds contempt. It's been 7, 8 years, however long it's been, and he's had high-profile moments, most notably in the finals 2 years ago where he didn't show up. And so now it's one of those things where, you know how it is, you're around your buddies and you spill a drink and everyone's like, oh, here's Clumsy, he's all drunk or whatever. And then from then on, anyone else can spill drinks and do whatever, it's all good. You spill a drink again, of course, that's what he does, he's clumsy. Well, no, I just did it one time at a party with a bunch of girls there, and now I look stupid. So I think it's one of those things where it's people are just kind of, because he did it, clenched up or whatever at the biggest moment, the biggest stage before, now every time he does it, it feels like, oh, here we go again.
All right, so I want to ask a question about game 2, but before that, because of the duo there where you say they don't care on the team, and I agree with you, if Tatum and Brown were to walk into that studio right now, who gets to sit at the desk and who has to sit at the timeout chair that you're in?
See, now this is an interesting question because we're assuming sitting at the desk next to Emerson is a positive, right? If Claudia was here, different story. It's of course, this is the marquee seat. Now I'm kind of when I walked in, I was now I kind of realized, I'm pretty busy. Also, how long have you been wearing those underwear?
Well, I have the new ones on. I have the new ones.
He's got new ones now.
I have my new black ones on here. Look, check it out.
Sacks.
Oh God,
there you go.
Yeah, that's right, baby.
You don't have to show us.
Oh well, yeah. I just wanted
to prove it.
It's one of those things where in radio when you beep out a sound that's not actually that offensive and makes it sound worse. Watching you behind your computer start to pull down your pants, really not the visual that anybody needed to see.
And GoJo, for the audio listeners, I have to make it clear. I didn't say Saks because I saw something. That's the name of his underwear. It says SAXX on it.
Yep. Thank you for clarifying that. I mean, appreciate that. Okay, now a question about game 2. We saw Boston play great defense. That's something they do. We saw them hoist up threes. That's what they do. Yep. What does Dallas have to do different in game 2?
Oof. All right. Well, first of all, they can't come out looking shell-shocked offensively. They have to get into their offense a lot quicker. They got to get people involved. I think one of the best things they did in the earlier rounds of the playoffs is it didn't turn into the Luka and Kyrie show and everyone else stands around and waits for a kick out. They got PJ Washington involved. They got Jaden Hardy off the bench involved. They were able to generate offense outside of those two guys. Last night, it was like a nightmare. It was reverting all the way back to like Luka's rookie year. He had 1 assist, which never happens. And it's because he had to force his offense because nobody else had anything going. So I think offensively, they got to find a way to get it going and particularly get everybody else going. Number 2, Kyrie Irving, I expect is going to have a huge game. He knows he didn't play well. He knows he's looked at as the guy who's been here before, the guy who's hit the big shots. He had a bad game. And I'm not just talking about missing shots. I'm talking about turnovers. I'm talking about, I think, the crowd a little bit got to him. And so I expect him to come out with a renewed vigor and vengeance. And that's got to be a point of emphasis as well. Number 3, we talked about it earlier. You've got to attack their bigs. Look, Holiday, excellent perimeter defender. Derek White, excellent perimeter defender. Tatum, Brown, excellent perimeter defenders. Horford and Porzingis, healthy or not, those are your weak points, relatively speaking to the other guys. So how can we hunt those matchups and hunt those matchups particularly in the middle of the floor that gives those guys the maximum number of opportunities to find guys and take advantage of the help. And then obviously on the defensive end, you cannot let Boston tee up threes. The game plan is pretty, blunt here. You have to run them off the line, even if it comes at the expense of plays at the rim. This is a team that wants to live and die by the 3. Choke them out at the 3-point line because the more opportunities they get, the more reps they get out there, the harder it is to stop them. 3-point defense, gentlemen, in the NBA, people look at it as like, oh, they held them to 7 of 30. It's not about the percentage because the reality is the shooters are going to make shots. You had very little to do with it. It's about taking away the opportunities. So you want 40 attempts to get down to 30 or even maybe below 30. That's what I think Dallas needs to do defensively.
Certainly easier said than done with the Celtics squad that's been one of the best 3-point shooting teams all year long, but you're absolutely right. You can't allow them to get to those looks, and especially those open looks, as often as they did. You mentioned Kyrie needing to have a big game coming up. In general, he's been a huge story this postseason. What in your mind has been behind the Kyrie Irving renaissance that we've seemingly had in the last couple of weeks?
I mean, GoJo, it's a lot of things. Like part of it is growth. Right? We're human beings. We grow. We're not the same people we were when we were 25, when we're 15 or whatever. I think Kyrie has grown because he's older, just a natural growth, but grown also because of his experiences. You go, you experience things. When he left Cleveland and got here to Boston, his thing was, I have the formula. I'm going to teach these young guys how to win. And it was kind of preachy and lecturing, and these guys are like, who the hell are you? Like, you're just a guy who played with LeBron. And so I don't think his messaging was as polished as it is now for a team that's a lot more willing to listen and accept. I think also the situation he was in Brooklyn was not a good one. Look, I know everyone's all about player empowerment and everything. Organizations still have to have structure. They still have to have standards that are set by someone other than the guys playing on the field or playing on the court. And players respect that, hey, these are the standards. We're all held to them. When you have guys come in and they do whatever they want, and him and Durant and Harden, for the most part, got to do what they wanted in Brooklyn. There's a lack of structure there, and I think it allows for a lot more slippage and a lot less productivity. And so coming to Dallas, it's an organization that's won a championship. They have a championship culture. They had structure, and most importantly, they had a hierarchy through Luka, obviously, as a star player, but then Jason Kidd as the head coach, a guy who's been a head coach before, a guy who's a Hall of Famer, a champion, all those things. It's easier to come to that conclusion like, wow, I'm in a good situation now. These people treat me with respect. I should respect the institution around it and do whatever I can to be productive.
All right, game 2 coming up in a month, it seems. Why it's Sunday, I have no idea.
Money.
Yeah, I know. Until then, you mentioned head coach. Let's talk about a possible new head coach with the Lakers, Danny Hurley. After Woj drops the Woj bomb yesterday, Hurley meeting today with the Lakers. So my question is, as he's sitting there like Ben Affleck in Good Will Hunting in front of the executive saying, retainer, what questions is Danny Hurley asking in this interview and talking to the brass of the Lakers?
Emerson really loved the Good Will Hunting reference. I'm guessing it's because it's a Boston movie.
How do you like them apples, baby?
So,
Jesus.
So For Danny Hurley, I think the number one thing I'm asking for is, are you guys committed? Are you guys committed to me? This Laker organization, more so than any other team in the league, is the first one to bail when either their fans or their players are like, I don't know about this guy, right? If you think about some of the great coaches that they've had who they ran out very quickly, Mike Brown, Mike D'Antoni. If you think about Phil Jackson, they didn't run out quickly, but they ran him out. They ran him out at one point. And this is a guy that had won titles for them. It's a weird organization. It's not run like any other. It's a mom and pop organization. And I mean that in the most literal sense, right? This is Jerry Buss's team that he gave to his kids, and his kids who their entire life is a life of learning working under dad. So this isn't Mark Cuban, billionaire from something else. And this isn't James Dolan, inherited billionaire from something else. This is, hey, our fortune came from this thing here. We are rich because of the Lakers, not because of real estate, not because of tech, not because of some other industry. And as a result, some of these things, even though it's the big glamorous Lakers, they're still run like a mom and pop place. So if I'm Danny Hurley, I want to know, are you guys committed? Because I'm going to do things and I'm going to coach in a way that may not make everybody comfortable. But if the organization bails on me because someone grumbles or because we don't get the immediate result we're looking for, then this isn't going to work.
Well, you mentioned that, which I think we didn't talk about enough on the show yesterday, but coaching style, because Danny Hurley himself has said when he's talked about the NBA, he's like, there aren't a lot of coaches that coach the way I do there. And he said, maybe self-deprecating some, I need to mature a little bit more on the sideline before I'd be ready for an opportunity like that. Is he there? Is the guy that we just saw bowing up on Zach Edey during the this postseason run with UConn ready to go and coach grown men in the NBA?
I don't know, GoJo. I guess, again, people mature, and I got to give him the benefit of the doubt for that. But this is what I will say, is when you look at college coaches, the ones that succeed are the ones who understand this isn't the same as college basketball. Because there are college coaches who say, basketball is basketball. It's 94 feet. The rim is 10 feet off the ground. I can just come in there, and we know what the terminology is. And the reality is it's not. It's like speaking Spanish and speaking Italian. You might understand and maybe even get by in Italian as a Spanish speaker, but they're not the same language. And there are going to be some differences. And if you do not appreciate those differences when you walk in the door, you're doomed to fail. And I think a lot of the guys, the most recent was John Beilein, who came from Michigan down to the Cavs, he did not understand or respect, this thing is different, dude. You can't just say, well, I've coached basketball for 40 years. It's all the same. David Blatt's another one. Came from Europe. Yeah. Incredibly successful. All these guys are successful. These are not bad coaches. They're just guys who could not adjust to this is a different animal over here. And if you don't, then you're doomed to fail.
I always like to try and figure out, because I don't know if I could sit there through that interview and not be waiting to hear the number. Maybe that's just me. How much you think he's going to get? I mean, Woj keeps talking about a massive offer. I mean, the number's going through my head. I can't imagine he's going to be the highest paid. That's Steve Kerr at 18.5. But he's, I'd imagine the penny is going to be pretty good.
So Mike Brown just signed a new deal in Sacramento. They gave him a $4.5 million raise and then 8.5. So he's getting 8.5 a year for 3 years. If I'm Coach Hurley, the number is important, but the years is way more important.
Right.
I'd rather get 6 a year for 6 years than get 10 for 3 years. And you say, wait a second, why would you take that big of a cut? Because I know if this is hanging on them, and again, this is a mom and pop organization. They can't just write off these things as easily as, say, the Knicks or the Raptors or one of these other bigger teams that makes money elsewhere. And so from that standpoint, I think the years, to me, if I'm Danny Hurley, I'm looking for that commitment and say, look, you sign this with me, and we're going to be together for a while.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch already how quickly this has transpired, going from a couple days ago, we all thought J.J. Redick was going to wind up to be the new coach of the Lakers, and now Danny Hurley getting a chance to go out and visit with the mom and pop organization that's got all them banners in it there. Amin, we always appreciate the time, brother. Figure out how you and Emerson are going to get out of the studio together here. I hope he doesn't try to show you his underwear again.
No, I'm just going to take off.
Yeah, all right, man. Well, hey, you're going to be on the Sweat this weekend. I'm excited for that.
Jesus. Where's my water?
Get him the hell away from Emerson Latzia. Coming up next, we'll see how this news with Danny Hurley's going over in Storrs, Connecticut. GoJo Golic.
All right, folks, on the heels of leading UConn to back-to-back national championships, Dan Hurley has reportedly emerged as the Lakers' priority target in their coaching search. Hurley telling Huskies players on Thursday that he is in talks with LA. Hurley's camp expected to meet with the Lakers later today. And the guys are joined now by a man who will help us get to the bottom of it all, right? Meow.
Yes, John Fanta joining us now here, Fox Sports College Basketball play-by-play announcer, and in this case here, host of Big East Shoot-Around, going to help us try and digest how this news is going over in Storrs right now, John, because we talked in the last segment to Amin Elhassan about what the Lakers side views this as an opportunity, but take us through what you heard about the meeting and the way that this news has registered with this UConn team.
Well, fellas, as you celebrated earlier, all of Storrs needs a donut today. Everybody around that area could use one, because right now the vibes are highly concerned and panicking. I mean, because you're talking about a situation where you are on cloud nine. Your team is on cloud nine. Your program's on cloud nine. UConn men's basketball has mostly been on that cloud since 1999 with the 6 national championships in the last 25 years. Their focus becomes a three-peat. Dan Hurley talks about becoming John Wooden. He's literally said Wooden's name. He has a picture of John Wooden in his office in Storrs because he wants to be like him. That was the thought. Of course, 5 to 7 years from now, he thought, I'll be in the NBA. Well, that gets accelerated when it's the Los Angeles Lakers calling. So what's the vibe? Well, he told his players yesterday morning before their noon practice that yes, these rumors, they're real, that he's in talks with the Lakers. Now, the University of Connecticut put together a lucrative contract offer to Hurley that included significant benefits across the board for him and his family. This has been in place long before the Lakers have reached out to talk with Hurley. But that contract offer has not been signed. So I think that behind the scenes, there's been a little bit of perplexing nature in Storrs, wondering what's going on, what would be the holdup here. But right now, there's a panic because, guys, we're not talking about a situation where he would just be leaving. It's the timing. It's June. Every college basketball head coach around the country that UConn would want on their wish list, they've set their roster. They're dealing out their NIL, and their teams are practicing right now.
So along those lines, let's keep it on UConn for a moment. Along those lines, back-to-back national titles. They're preseason number 3, I think, going into this year. So certainly have power left on that team. But if he were to go, players on that team have a 30-day window to skip town. Do you think that is a real possibility that a number of players will leave?
Well, I think it would definitely be one if we were talking about a different time in this. But when I talk with other people, whether it be agents or other coaches who could aspire to be at UConn, guys, yeah, it's a great place. But there's 2 or 3 coaches that I know would be at the top of UConn's wish list that are saying, I've got my kids on campus. And, I got this question a lot from people yesterday. To be clear, men's basketball teams, women's basketball teams, they're all on campus right now. They have a summer practice window, and these teams are beginning their season. Like 2024-25 for college basketball, at least for these coaches and these players, not for us. None of us are thinking about it. I am, but the common person's not thinking about the sport right now. But it's underway. So I don't think, Mike, that we're in a situation where UConn is going to even be able to go outside the family. And if they are, I think that would result in a mass exodus. But based on my discussions with people that are in the know around Storrs, the thought would be they're going to keep it in the family to, one, retain the players. I think either Kamani Young or Luke Murray will get elevated to the head coaching spot if Hurley does, in fact, take the Lakers job. If I were a betting man, I would say that Kamani Young, the associate head coach right now, that title, he ends up getting the head job. Maybe it's a stand-in role for just this year. Maybe it is. He's now the head coach. And I think Dan Hurley brings Luke Murray with him to Los Angeles. That's how I think that this ends up going. But I think because of the timing, you're not going to see a mass exodus of players. Keep in mind, all these other teams, it's not that they wouldn't take the UConn talent, but they've mostly set their rosters. They've mostly dedicated what they've got in money in how they're distributing it. If you go and take a UConn player, they go to a comparable program, well, a kid that's already signed or a kid who's agreed to be with said program is going to say, wait a minute, what the hell's going on here?
You mentioned that, and I saw part of the Adrian Wojnarowski report yesterday was citing that, hey, relative to other programs, fundraising for things like NIL at a place like UConn that's not a massive Power 5 football program can be a bit of a challenge here. Where is UConn relative to their peers in that?
Well, they might not have the money that an Alabama or a Georgia football have. They don't. But when looking at what the terms of UConn's contract offer are behind the scenes, and when examining what's happening behind the scenes, I could tell you guys that they are as close to their peers as they could be, and that's in a good place. I mean, UConn is not in the SEC. They're not in the Big Ten. They're not in the Big 12. And the Big East doesn't have football money to be able to generate and dish out. But UConn is different from Villanova, St. John's, Georgetown, the others that are in their league, the Big East that people, fell in love with in the 80s, in that they're a state school that would be willing and is more than willing to sacrifice money. I mean, let's face it, guys. The University of Connecticut is in debt. Okay, what's more debt? They're not going to see basketball die or basketball suffer by dishing out the kind of money that it's my understanding that they would be dishing out in this one Hurley contract and two, what NIL looks like. Gino Auriemma just signed as large of a contract extension as you could imagine. So I would push back a little bit on that in that I know what Woj is saying. UConn doesn't have the football money. In fact, their football doesn't have a home, period. They don't have a conference. But I wouldn't say that they're hurting to a point that you worry about the future of UConn basketball. There's too many supporters. The state knows they're what they mean to say we're not going to continue to dish out money. And if we're an extra $20 million in debt, we are.
John, a little less than a minute ago, just your gut feeling, just your opinion. Is Dan gone?
I think he takes this job with the Lakers. I do. I think that Dan is wired in a way that he has a big ego. He's got a large personality, but he wants the next biggest thing in his career. That's how he's been wired. And I think for him, when you look at the fact, guys, that in 2010, he's wrapping up his 9th year at St. Benedict's in Newark, New Jersey. Nobody could have seen this. He couldn't have seen it. And now in 2024, he could be coaching LeBron James and Anthony Davis. To me, it's that opportunity. It's that challenge. He's also fueled by doubt. Let's face it. In the college game, he has nothing left to prove. And it'd be really, really hard to three-peat. I know they're a preseason top 3 team that we're looking at. I honestly think that's more off of all that they've done the last 2 years, more than it is on what exactly I think their team would be heading into this upcoming season. No disrespect, just how I feel. I think he looks at this situation and says there's no better time than the present. He gets a big payday. He gets to be the coach of a storied franchise. He could potentially write the last chapter with LeBron James on something. And guys, let's just say it doesn't work out. Then he got a huge payday. Yeah. And if he went back to college, anybody would hire him.
There you go.
Absolutely the truth there. John, we appreciate the help and insight on this, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
guys. Have a great weekend.
you ready to dive into the world of women's sports like never before? Of course you are. From jaw-dropping plays to laugh-out-loud moments, get ready to meet your newest obsession on DraftKings Network. Good Follow is your all-access pass to the best in women's sports, culture, comedy, and lifestyle. Good Follow is not just your typical sports show either here, people. They're breaking barriers, sparking conversations, and celebrating the diverse voices that make women's sports so incredible. So whether you're a diehard fan or just looking for a good time here, join host Megan Reyes and the lineup of incredible guests every Friday night, 8 o'clock Eastern time, and be sure to follow along on social at Good Follow Show. So yes, Senior, your son has decided to take off and go play some golf. You and I are going to take over the last 2 blocks here. So the show is now called Lots of Golic. And
Love that.
I do too. I do too.
Yes.
We don't need GoJo, all right? So last night though, Senior, listen to this. The Oklahoma Sooners clinching the first four-peat in Women's College World Series history, beating Texas 8-4, finishing the sweep in the Women's College World Series championship here, dude. It was Oklahoma's 8th title overall, tying them with Arizona for the second most titles all time. But before we talk about this, let's hear from some of the Sooners following this historic moment.
I'm so proud of this team, and everyone had their hand in it. It was never one hero at the plate or one hero on the mound or anything like that. So this was a team effort, and we fought all season. You know, everybody had something to say about us all the time, and people counted us out, and it was just a grind. All in, mentally, physically, and we fought the whole year, and it was all so worth it in this moment.
All right, dude. I mean, it truly was a team effort, a full team effort, because I'm reading about it here. They had 5 different pitchers. They used 5 different pitchers, Oklahoma, last night, to get through Texas's lineup, which is just fearsome.
And listen, Texas had beaten them this year during the season, and Texas was thought that would be the team that would dethrone them, not to be. So you just heard Kinsey Hansen there, the catcher. She's one of 10 seniors, 5 who have really contributed significantly to that team, but 10 seniors who every year they were at Oklahoma won a national championship. They have 4 national championships, those seniors, and those seniors in tournament play are 41-4. They have 4 losses in tournament play and 4 national championships. Mm-hmm. They went through that entire class went through without not winning a national championship. That is incredible, the dominance there. And so congratulations to Patty Gasso's team and all the players there, especially those seniors who this is going to be tough to be beat. But what we did, Emerson, is and there are articles everywhere now, and I'm glad, to give love to other sports, of consecutive national championships. And while 4 is a great number for Oklahoma, and we don't want to diminish that at all, there are more than a few who have more than 4 over the years.
Oh, yeah, there certainly are. So one of them, and this is one that I know people are sleeping on at home because people tend to forget things that happened more than 100 years ago.
Yeah.
But the Yale men's golf team, all right, that was 8 straight, I believe, back in the early 1900s. That one stands out to me here. What else you got?
Well, yeah, so that was, yes, golf. It was 8 straight. It was in 1905 to 1912.
Okay.
That was their run.
You weren't even born yet.
No, I was not. No, I was not. The most, and give it up for North Carolina women's soccer. From 86 to 94, they won 9 straight titles. Then you have a couple at 7. You have Maryland women's lacrosse from 95 to 01 that won 7. And, of course, UCLA and John Wooden, men's basketball, they won 7 in a row as well. Then they get to USC in the early 70s, won 5 in baseball. Again, Northwestern women's lacrosse, 05 to 09, won 5. And then you get into the 4s. which include Oklahoma and this run here. I think the most in NCAA football, I believe, is 3.
Yeah.
So you have 4 of Virginia men's soccer, UCLA men's volleyball, UConn women's basketball.
Yep.
Gino Auriemma, we just talked to John Fanta from UConn, and he talked about Gino Auriemma getting the extension. What a program he's built there and how dominant it was. But what an incredible feeling. You know, it's a sad time. I'll never forget my last game, Emerson, wearing a Notre Dame football uniform. It was at a bowl game the last time I was at Notre Dame, and then the last time I actually knew I was going to have that uniform on. And listen, this is true of everybody. You get that moment, but what a way for these women, for the last time they're going to put on Oklahoma Sooner softball uniform. For that class, they won a championship every year. I can't get over it. I mean, it's incredible dominance. And it is a testament to their hard work because, you know, their long seasons, injuries involved, obviously other teams and the talent that they build to be able to hold everybody off for 4 years is kudos to them.
Yeah. Was your last game anything like that scene in Rudy, you know, where everyone went into the coach's office and put their jerseys on the desk of the head coach and said, you know, we need Golic to play this game?
Yeah, that was Hollywood. That didn't happen.
What?
No, come on. No, it was not like that. We did win our last game. I do believe it's a long time ago to remember in Notre Dame Stadium, but we lost my last game. It was in Hawaii at the Aloha Bowl. We lost to SMU. That was my last game in a Notre Dame uniform. And listen, I sat there and took that uniform off and I cried my eyes out, man. Yep. I mean, it is amazing how quick it goes. You know, I'm sitting here at Notre Dame now in my my house here that I do for 6 months, and now going on, student athletes are coming back and they are having recruiting weekends. So here's a whole, you know, you think about these young men and women coming in, and I'll stick to the football side of it. And basically, if I ever had their ear, I would tell them, and it seems like a lot at the time. If you say 6 home games in 4 years, you know, that's 24 times you get to run out of the tunnel. Maybe 5 years you're here, that's 30 times. It sounds like a big number at the time, but man, it goes quick. And the last thing you know is you're walking out onto that field, whether it's your home stadium or walking out onto your field of play, knowing it's the last time. And you won't put that uniform on again, and how that can get you and affect you once the moment is over. Once the game starts, you know, you're in it. But once it's over, man, what hits you? But boy, again, what a way to go out. What a return. These young ladies should never have to buy a meal or a drink again when they come back, you know, on campus to be celebrated, which they will. Over the years, they'll be celebrated time and time and time and time again, and they should always be treated like the champions that they are.
Until the day my grandfather died, he always talked about his time playing football at Notre Dame, 40-42 under Frank Leahy, and that last game that he played, I think he was about like 170-pound center for Notre Dame. He was the first resident from Florida to letter in football at Notre Dame, and my grandfather talked about it every single day. The only time he didn't talk about it was when he was laying on his recliner and he was just sitting there napping during all of the Notre Dame games later in his life when Lou Holtz was coaching.
Man, yeah. What great memories there. As I said, great memories for everybody. How disappointed was the family and you that you couldn't get into Notre Dame?
Yeah, pretty disappointed. My grades were close, but not good enough. That is for sure. I mean, they were disappointed that I didn't get to play a whole lot in high school. I was first team left bench though, senior. So I was able to accomplish something. I was also a special teams ace. All right.
That's okay. One of the many that peaked in grade school. That's all right. You're not alone there. You're not alone at all. Right? Congrats again to the women from the Oklahoma Sooner softball team. 4 straight national championships. Just absolutely incredible. They're high and Emerson's low of not getting into Notre Dame. We come back with this, that, and the third. Welcome back to GoJo Golic, or lots of Golic at this point, as my son is in Vegas with a bunch of his college buddies, and they had a very early tea time, which smart on them because it's going to get to about 115 in Vegas. So they'll properly hydrate after they have all their beer as they're going to golf. So he had to head out to the links there. But as always, you can download, subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen. Leave us that 5-star rating, please. Please, we beg of you. Watch us live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on DraftKings Network, streaming free on Samsung TV Plus, Roku channel, Xumo Play, and DraftKingsNetwork.com. Or if you need to catch up, you can always find full episodes on DraftKings YouTube. So we are into this, that, and the third. Me and Emerson are going to cover your bases on that. And for this, Emerson, all I have to say is, do you believe in miracles?
Dude, this was a bigger upset than that. So, yeah, you think back to that Olympic hockey showdown there between Team USA and the Soviet Union. So everyone thinks of that, right, Golic, as like one of the largest upsets in sports history. So Soviet Union technically would have been a minus 350 favorite. United States plus 600. In this cricket match this week, okay, you had Team USA was a massive underdog, stunning Pakistan in this enormous cricket World Cup upset. Pakistan was a minus 2,000 favorite, okay? Let that sink in here for a second. Upsetting the world, the cricket world, which I am not a massive member of.
No.
But this week, Golic, memories that come back to you from some of the major upsets you've seen over your lifetime. What are they?
Oh, that's it. I mean,
that's
listen,
it.
and listen, yeah, that to me is it. And now getting to know one of the stars of that team, Mike Eruzione, he is the godfather to my daughter-in-law, Jenny, who's married to my son, Jake. Jake and Jenny live right by him, and played in Mike's tournament. He's played in our golf tournament here. Just a great guy. But to hear him talk about those stories of that upset, and Emerson, I'm not going to lie. Remember, they played a couple of weeks before the Olympics in an exhibition, and and Soviet Union destroyed these guys. I'm stunned that the Soviet Union was only minus 350 going into that game.
Yeah.
That blows my mind. They weren't bigger favorites, but that to me had always been the greatest upset. And listen, I said I watch cricket when I have to travel overseas and I turn on the TV to watch sports overseas. You see soccer or cricket. So, I love watching cricket. I'd love to learn more about it, but I do like watching it. And this game, the win took place after a tense super over, a tie-breaking method in cricket similar to penalty shootout. The U.S. finished the super over with 18 runs, meaning Pakistan needed 19 to win. However, Team USA held on. Pakistan ended with 13 runs, giving U.S. the historic win. And again, I can't say I sit there and understand all that.
Yeah, I don't understand any of it.
Kudos to those guys, man, for pulling off that upset. One of the greatest, I mean, by gambling standpoint, I don't know, maybe you know, Emerson, of a bigger odds.
I don't know.
I'm sure someone will throw it out there. Of getting a victory as an underdog.
I think the more shocking part to me is the United States hosting a cricket World Cup.
Yeah,
I had no idea that this
was
sport,
in Dallas, right?
Yeah, it was in Dallas, and it's like we're talking one of the richest sporting countries in the world due to like NBA, NFL, MLB, all that stuff, and then there's this cricket World Cup, and that sport just seems to be big in every country minus the United States.
Could you imagine this was in Dallas, driving on a highway in Dallas and looking over and seeing a cricket match?
Yeah, I don't even know where it was held. You're driving by Jerry's World or something, and you're like, wait a minute, it doesn't look like the Cowboys practicing.
Wait, what the hell is that?
Is
all
that
right, for
Dak out there with a paddle?
Exactly. All right, for that, Emerson, for some reason, this conversation always stirs a lot. And that's uniforms, new uniforms out. And there's a couple of new uniforms out that I'm sure people are going to just rip apart because that's what they do.
Yeah, including the Utah Jazz here. Producer Glennon, I'm not sure if we're going to roll this sound or not, but I believe they released a video yesterday with some Okay, just some of their new uniforms, and they basically are paying respect to the Utah Jazz teams of the 90s, those legendary teams that suffered heartbreak after heartbreak, couldn't get the title. Karl Malone, second leading scorer, or maybe the third leading scorer now that LeBron is atop the list in NBA history. Stockton to Malone, Malone to Stockton, man. Everyone remembers the Michael Jordan flu game. So, they're, I don't know, a little pain for pleasure here, I guess.
Yeah, listen, I'm always a sucker for different uniforms. And you're right, Malone and Stockton, talk about the bad timing award of who you're in the league with at that point. But they coming out with the new uniforms, and the Vikings doing the same thing. The Minnesota Vikings, they have some. They unveiled the entirely white alternate uniform for the 2024 season. The Winter Warrior look features a white helmet with a satin finish and is adorned by a metallic gray stripe inspired by the metal stripping found on ancient Viking helmets. See, I love that description. That description gets me because some of my most favorite shows that I watch on Netflix or Hulu or whatever has to do with the Vikings. I love that stuff. So I'm a fan of these. I'm always amazed, Emerson, how when you break out uniforms you're going to wear once or twice or a couple times, how people can rip them. To me, I'm cool with it. I love when you change it up for a game or two for whatever reason it's going to be. In this case, the alternate uniforms for a game. I just think it's really cool. And I love the all white. Big fat guys, big fat linemen won't like the all white, but I think the all white's pretty cool.
See, I think it would be a lot cooler if they actually played outdoors and give me a snowy game with these dudes in these icy whites. Yeah, so back in April, the NFL allowed teams to add a third helmet to their wardrobes and allowing kind of these alternate uniforms. So along with the Vikings, you had the Broncos, Texans, Lions have all added alternate uniforms this offseason.
Yeah, very, very cool. All right, Emerson, for the third, we have a little update here on a revoked license situation.
Yes, we do. You may remember last week here, Senior, when we did a story on a guy who arrived to a Zoom court date, which I didn't really know was a thing until that moment, for driving with a suspended license here while he was driving his car. So then this story taking a stranger turn yesterday when the judge dropped this bombshell.
Let me make it very clear, based upon what the court looked at, he has never had a Michigan license, ever, and has never had a license in the other 49 states and commonwealths that form up this great union. He has never had a license.
I mean, So again, the story was that he was supposed to appear in court for a suspended license, and he was driving and told the judge, yes, I'm driving, I'm on the way to the doctor's, and the judge looked befuddled like, your license is suspended. How can you be driving? And now we find out this dude has never had a license. Yet, obviously, I guarantee you, when he was driving in that Zoom call to court, wasn't the first time he was driving. So this guy has never had a license in his life.
No, poor guy. And he said he was driving to pulling into his doctor's office there. So, yeah, you knew his heart rate was going to be up once he entered that doctor's office. But my question is, don't you need like a license just to do basic things in life? Like, don't you need one? You go to the airport? I don't know. Maybe if you're trying to get into like a bar, but for him to never have a license, I'm talking even of his younger days. Like, how is this dude able to function in everyday life?
I guess you have to bring another form of ID, something that has to have a picture on it. But I mean, just for the simple task of going into a bar, hey, can I see your ID? Or mostly your driver's license. What the hell are you showing?
I don't know.
That's amazing. But dude been driving around without a license. So, hey, I guess kudos to him, but kudos to the fact that hopefully it sounds like at least he never got in an accident. And and we'll see how much that's going to be rectified. All right, Lazio.
Yep, lots of Golic. Great job. Great show today, especially the last two blocks.
Yeah, it really was. It could be part of the Emmy reel as Mike is out in Vegas. We hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you Monday. Enjoy hockey Saturday, Game 2 Sunday. We'll talk to you Monday.